In August of 1962, on a road outside a small French town, a group of gunmen ambushed a motorcade carrying President Charles de Gaulle, spraying the presidential car with more than 100 rounds of automatic weapons fire. And, by the time the smoke cleared, every single tire on that car had been shot flat. And yet the driver simply kept accelerating, the car staying perfectly level and controllable as it sped away to safety. An outcome that would have been physically impossible in almost any other automobile built in 1962, because the car carrying de Gaulle that day was a Citroen DS. And the reason it could keep driving on destroyed tires wasn't luck, it was engineering so far ahead of its era that automotive journalists still argue about which cars on the road today have finally caught up to it. And that story is really just the opening chapter in a much longer pattern. Because automotive history is full of vehicles that arrived so early, so radically ahead of what the market or the available technology could actually support, that their brilliance became almost indistinguishable from their downfall. And understanding these 5 cars means understanding both what made them genuinely visionary and why being right too soon so often turned out to be its own kind of curse. And there's no better place to start than that Citroen DS itself, unveiled at the Paris Motor Show in October of 1955, to a reaction so overwhelming that the company took in 12,000 orders before the show had even ended. Because underneath its impossibly smooth, aerodynamic bodywork, a shape so slippery it achieved a drag coefficient that mainstream sedans wouldn't consistently match again until the 1980s, sat a completely reimagined approach to how a car interacts with the road. A hydropneumatic suspension system invented by engineer Paul Méagès that replaced conventional steel springs with pressurized spheres of nitrogen gas and hydraulic fluid, giving the DS a self-leveling ride that automotive writers nicknamed the magic carpet effect, a system so integrated into the car's engineering that the very same hydraulic circuit also powered the steering, the brakes, and even the semi-automatic transmission, meaning a driver could raise or lower the entire car's ride height with a lever inside the cabin, useful for crossing rough terrain or, as countless owners have since demonstrated, for changing a flat tire without ever needing a jack. And the DS backed up that mechanical wizardry with genuine safety innovation too, becoming one of the first cars in the world engineered around dedicated crumple zones and an energy-absorbing steering column specifically designed to protect occupants in a serious impact. Ideas that wouldn't become mainstream industry practice for another 2 decades. But here's the twist that connects this car to so many others on this list. Because that same relentless innovation made the DS notoriously complicated and expensive to service. Its exotic hydraulic system intimidating to mechanics accustomed to conventional suspension, and while the car remained in production for 2 full decades and sold nearly 1.5 million units, a genuine commercial success by any measure, it also permanently established a reputation among casual buyers that Citroën engineering was brilliant but slightly terrifying to actually own, a perception the brand never fully shook. And if the DS proved that radical engineering could still succeed, commercially, provided it was managed carefully. The second car on this list proves what happens when that same kind of radical ambition runs directly into an unsolved technical problem. Because in 1967, the small German manufacturer NSU unveiled the Ro 80, a sleek, wedge-shaped sedan that looked less like a product of the 1960s and more like something a design studio would sketch decades later, powered by a genuinely revolutionary twin-rotor Wankel rotary engine that was smoother, lighter, and more compact than any conventional piston engine of comparable output. Wrapped in a body so aerodynamically refined that treasured automotive historians still note it wouldn't have looked remotely out of date sitting in a showroom in the 1990s. And the Ro 80 backed up its futuristic shape with genuinely advanced engineering throughout. Independent suspension at all 4 corners, disc brakes on every wheel, at a time when that was still a luxury feature, front-wheel drive, and a semi-automatic clutch system that let drivers shift gears without a clutch pedal. A combination so impressive that the Ro 80 won the prestigious European Car of the Year award in just its first year on sale. But the Wankel rotary engine that made the Ro 80 feel so revolutionary also concealed a devastating flaw. Because the metal apex seals sealing each rotor tip against the engine housing wore out catastrophically fast, sometimes failing in as little as 15,000 miles even under careful ownership, leaving owners stranded with dead engines and NSU facing crippling warranty claims as it replaced engine after engine, trying to make good on a car it had promised the world. And the financial damage proved so severe that NSU, once one of the largest motorcycle manufacturers on Earth, collapsed into a merger that folded the company into what would eventually become Audi, meaning one of the most visionary sedans of the entire decade effectively bankrupted the very company brave enough to build it. And while the third car on this list didn't bankrupt anyone directly, it represents perhaps the single boldest experiment in automotive history. Because in 1963, the Chrysler Corporation, after decades of quietly developing turbine engine technology originally inspired by jet aircraft propulsion, unveiled the Chrysler Turbine car, a genuinely stunning two-door coupe with bodywork built by the Italian design house Ghia and a jet-inspired gas turbine engine capable of running on an almost absurd range of fuels, from conventional kerosene and diesel to, according to Chrysler's own promotional demonstrations, even tequila. And rather than simply building a handful of show cars to tour auto shows, Chrysler made an extraordinarily bold decision, manufacturing 55 nearly identical turbine bronze-colored coupes and loaning 50 of them directly to ordinary members of the public, ultimately putting the cars into the hands of 203 different drivers across 133 cities nationwide, who collectively logged more than 1 million miles of real-world testing between 1963 and 1966, and the feedback was genuinely encouraging. Drivers loved the turbine's incredible smoothness and the engine's near-total absence of vibration. But the economics behind the program were brutal, because building each hand-assembled turbine engine alone cost Chrysler something in the neighborhood of $10,000, at a moment when an entire mid-range production car sold for roughly $3,000, meaning scaling the technology up to genuine mass production made no realistic financial sense. And when the public trial concluded, Chrysler made a decision that still pains collectors today, reclaiming almost every single car and destroying all but 9 of them specifically to avoid import duties and liability concerns tied to the Italian-built bodies, meaning one of the most ambitious automotive experiments in American history survives today, in barely a handful of running examples scattered across museums and a small number of private collections. And the fourth car on this list proves that being ahead of your time doesn't always require exotic engines or radical suspension systems. Sometimes it simply means packing an entire generation's worth of future luxury technology into a single staggeringly expensive automobile, because the 1957 Cadillac Eldorado Brougham arrived as the brand's ultimate showcase of what American engineering could achieve without any real regard for cost, becoming the first American production sedan built without a center door pillar, the first Cadillac fitted with quad headlights, a feature so new that it was still illegal in several states at the time of the car's launch, and equipped with a self-leveling air suspension system. Genuinely pioneering technology that replaced conventional coil springs entirely and represented the first serious application of air suspension on any production automobile. And Cadillac didn't stop there, packing the Eldorado Brougham with power seats that remembered a driver's preferred position, automatic headlight dimming that reacted to oncoming traffic, a transistorized radio at a time when vacuum tubes still dominated car audio, and a stainless steel roof, features so comprehensive that the car's final sticker price landed at just over $13,000, genuinely more expensive than a contemporary Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud. But that very ambition became the car's undoing, too.